Welcome back to Next Gen Console Watch, our show following all the news and updates on the PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, and all new gen hardware. I'm Daemon Hatfield, and as always, I'm joined by Max Scoville, host of IGN's PlayStation podcast, Podcast Beyond. Hello. And Ryan McCaffrey, host of IGN's Xbox podcast, Podcast Unlocked.
Good to be back.
Welcome back, Ryan, after a well-deserved vacation. And this week, we're looking at possible new hardware announcements that could be on the horizon. There's all sorts of rumors swirling, rumors about a new handheld device, maybe something new from Nintendo. And of course, both the PS5 and Series X are 2.5 years into their lifespans now. There's got to be some sort of a mid-generation refresh, pro versions of these consoles being worked on in a secret lab somewhere. So, Max, let's start with the rumors that I keep hearing about this. Possibly a new handheld from Sony that apparently wouldn't be a successor to the Vita, wouldn't natively play any games on its own. It would be a cloud-based handheld device that I believe is intended to stream games from your PlayStation 5. There are several reasons why I find these reports a little hard to believe, not the least of which is that this handheld sounds really dumb. What's your take on this?
Not to put too fine a point on it, but Sony has released dumb things in the past, so, it's possible. Dream big, anything can happen. Also, just key thing, these are just rumors right now. There really isn't much concrete evidence to go on with these, so take it with a grain of salt. That said, I really hope they're just rumors because it sounds like a thing that no one asked for and probably nobody wants. Aside from the novelty of there being a new PlayStation-branded device of some sort, the idea here is that this would basically be a dedicated remote play device, so I'm guessing sort of the form factor of a Switch, except it would just do remote play with your PlayStation 5, which is great, except you can already do that with a phone or a laptop or a controller hooked up to a tablet or whatever. Like there's so many, the whole point is to not have to buy a new thing with cloud-based stuff, so that seems completely baffling to me. It's entirely possible, but Sony did just recently partner with Backbone to make a dedicated, PlayStation branded sort of controller grip for your phone, so you could do exactly this. So, this is effectively an answer to a question that I don't think anyone was asking.
Yeah, I don't know what purpose it would serve. Ryan, Xbox is obviously heavily invested in cloud gaming. What's sort of your take on this idea, a cloud-based handheld from Sony?
Well, I mean, maybe we're just all overthinking it in the sense that if it is just basically a shell and you can still just do this on your phone, because that's what Xbox has right now. You can do this, you can stream games from the cloud, from your console to your phone, hook up a Bluetooth controller, hook up the Backbone thing, whichever way you want to do it. It's there. It's part of your Game Pass Ultimate subscription. So if this is just going to be a conduit, one option to do this on the PlayStation side, then sure, that's all well and good. But if it's going to be, if it were to be over marketed as like a PlayStation handheld, that's probably going to backfire pretty badly.
Yeah. Max, what do you think about the idea of a more traditional handheld gaming device from Sony? Obviously, it got stung by the Vita, even though it was a very well-made handheld device, and I think hardcore PlayStation fans have a lot of love for that device. I just don't know where they would fit into the market today, because Nintendo still has, the sort of like entry level, the casual sort of, family-friendly handheld market locked up, and then the Steam Deck kind of has the high-end portable market locked up. So I don't know. What do you think of the idea of a more traditional handheld device from Sony today?
I think there's space for that. Again, this is less my expert analysis and more my own personal Christmas wish list, but I would love to see a PS4 Pocket. I would love to see them take everything that was on the PS4 and put it on a little tiny, and obviously with the Steam Deck out there, like we know that can be done. Like it's totally feasible to have console quality games running on a handheld. And I think there is some demand for, on the more console side of things, like people want a Super Switch, an HD Switch, whatever you want to call it, and it would be kind of funny to see Sony come in and strike while the iron's hot with something like that. The comparison I always keep making is, and this is definitely like a bad thing to point to for successful handhelds, but the Sega Nomad, I always loved that was like the Genesis was on its way out, and they were like, what if a Game Gear could play every Genesis game? And I mean,
Turbo Express did it right from the jump. That was you play the same games on your home TV, and then the Hue cards You could take it on the go. So it was very expensive,
Yeah.
but it existed back in like 1990.
No, it's a cool idea, and obviously like there is that huge PlayStation ecosystem. There's a lot of people who have these games already, and I could definitely see people maybe who already own a PS5 and have a few extra bucks. I think if you were to tell people they could play their entire PlayStation library on the go, I think you'd get a lot more people paying attention than if you were like, hey, we made a new VR headset. It seems like a much more accessible concept. That said, it doesn't. I don't know. I don't really see it actually happening.
Okay, well, this next one, I think I might need a little explainer from you, Max. There's also these rumors about a new PS5 model with a detachable disk drive. What would the purpose of that be?
I need some explaining on that one too. I don't get it. The mental image that keeps popping up is the Xbox 360 peripheral that played
The HD DVD player.
Rest in peace. We don't talk about those anymore or play them. But yeah, it seems. I'm trying to think. Can you think of any device that's aside from the Famicom disk drive in Japan? Can you think of any external disk product that's been seen as a success in terms of gaming?
The Sega CD, kinda, yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Like again, it's an odd choice there. It also seems just especially baffling because we have a diskless and a diskful PS5 already. Those exist. There have been. I mean, I could see them effectively being like, well, not enough people are buying the disc version. There's not enough demand for that. But if people do want to be, playing Blu-rays, UHD, Blu-rays, whatever. There's the option to buy that, but I think in order for that to be remotely something that sounds interesting, we'd have to see a newly redesigned PS5 to make that sort of seem like a necessary purchase in any capacity. I don't know.
Okay, now let's touch on Nintendo. Nintendo just announced its own Nintendo Live event in September. That's something they started doing in Japan a few years ago. First time they're holding it in the US, and it sounds a lot like what they would normally do for E3. It's all ages, family friendly, inviting people to come play Nintendo Switch games that are out now and some that are presumably will be out soon. And then they're gonna have some sort of a stage presence with presentations and performances. I don't know if last year they had a big Nintendo Direct in September where they announced the full title of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom and the release date. They had Pikmin 4, Octopath Traveler 2, Fire Emblem Engage. So it was a big Direct with a lot of big announcements. Part of me thinks, it's what, 6 years now that since the Switch has been released. Maybe they finally have new hardware to show and they want people on hand to actually get their hands on it. I don't know, Ryan, is that wishful thinking?
I want you to be right, but I do think it's wishful thinking. It's now Nintendo, they play by their own rules. They don't necessarily follow traditional announcement patterns and what have you, but I think this thing is going to leak way before any of this. I mean, that's just how any big hardware goes these days, from the PS5, the Series X, the Xbox One, the PS4, going back further. Any new iPhone, Apple's AR device that they're apparently sinking a ton of money into. All this stuff, like, there's just so many elements, so many stops along the parts supply chain that it always inevitably leaks. So I think we're going to hear about the Switch successor well in advance of something like this. So if they can somehow manage to surprise everyone at that event, then more power to them. But I don't see it happening in sort of the modern climate of tech hardware and the difficulty of keeping secrets in the tech industry.
Well, it doesn't even necessarily need to be a surprise at the event. It could be announced ahead of time, and maybe that's the first time people get hands-on with it. I don't know. Maybe it's wishful thinking. I'm going to continue to keep my fingers crossed.
I would love to see it too. I'm skeptical that Nintendo would have something where fans and regular people could get their hands on a brand new device. Eventually that happens, but I would see them doing probably something new. A new Nintendo console is cause to bug the mainstream press and get them, get Wall Street Journal to come down and check this new thing out. And like that's the kind of thing where they're kind of ringing all the alarm bells, and they get CNN will cover it. Like that's a big deal, and I just don't necessarily see them doing it at a place where, I don't know, there's the risk of a child breaking a prototype or what have you.
Well, you both make good points. Then let's touch on the inevitable mid-generation refresh, the pro versions of both of these current-gen consoles. We haven't heard any rumblings, about it's not like we think that something's going to happen imminently. It's coming this fall holiday season. But the question is when. Ryan, are you 100% sure we'll get some sort of a pro version of both of these consoles this generation?
I can't be 100% sure unless somebody had just told me about it on the inside, but I am about as close to 100% certain as I can get. I guess we'd call that 99% certain without having any actual confirmation of it, because it's just, these are PCs now. These consoles are PCs. We are conditioned as buyers of tech to go along with these more frequent incremental updates. There's no way. I mean, the Xbox One X was by all accounts a success. The PS4 Pro was by all accounts a success. Yes, the pandemic sort of disrupted the supply chain and probably set the plans back a little bit. But I can't imagine that we are going to that the next major hardware release will be the formal successor, the Series Y and the PlayStation 6. I fully expect we will get mid-cycle refreshes, but I think where maybe we could have looked at those as a potentially even fall 2023 as that early, because everybody's only just now getting their hands on the PS5 and Series X. I think the earliest we would see it would be next fall 2024, which 4 years in, which is it probably is going to be the halfway point of this generation. I would suspect, particularly after the slow start supply chain wise to this generation, that 8 years is probably a reasonable expectation. That's how long the Xbox 360 went. So it's been done. I do think both will hit at the same time, the same way that the PS5 and Series X hit at the same time, whereas the PS4 Pro hit a year earlier than the Xbox One X, and the One X was notably more powerful because of that extra year that they had ahead of it. But I don't think there's any chance in hell that it's this year. I think there's a reasonable chance it's next fall. Could it slip into 2025? I think it could, but I think next year we will probably start to hear those inevitable supply chain leaks and strong rumors of these things.
Yeah,
Max, that sound about right to you?
That's spot on. Yeah, pretty much. I wouldn't be surprised if between now and then, if we got some kind of a refresh, some kind of an aesthetic thing, whether it's like a white Series X or a PS5 slim-ish, different shaped wings or something like that, just to sort of maybe make people pay attention who haven't grabbed one of these yet. But the big thing is going to be, I think, when do you cut the cord with last gen? Because we're still getting so many games that are last gen compatible, and that's great for people who are still playing last gen. But at the same time, we're approaching 10 years since that hardware launched, and if you're still making games that have to accommodate a PS4, it's you got to kill some darlings here. The future is coming.
It's hard to leave a combined 150 plus million user base between the Xbox One and the PS4. That's hard to leave behind if you're a third-party publisher. The first-party publishers pretty well already have, right? We've talked about that on this podcast before. Like Spider-Man's PS5 only, Wolverine's PS5 only, and on the Xbox side, okay, Minecraft Legends out next week is cross-gen. I believe that's the last one. Forza Motorsport next-gen only, Starfield next-gen only, Redfall next-gen only, and moving out from there, all next-gen only as well. So it'll be interesting to see how long it takes the third parties to follow the first parties in finally moving on.
I think we're going to see more things get announced for cross-gen, and then the last-gen versions get kind of quietly axed.
Could very well happen, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we got the news today that Redfall at launch on Series X and Series S, it will be capped at 30 frames per second in a quality mode, and that a 60 frames per second performance mode will come to the game at a later date via a patch. Ryan, what do you make of this, and is this some sort of indication that we do need a pro version of these consoles? Because games running at 60 frames per second was not uncommon last generation.
Yeah, I mean, I'll need to see a bigger sample size before declaring the need for that Xbox Series XX. This is just one game, albeit a very large, big deal first-party game. So that makes this look a lot worse. And it's not great. Believe me, I'll be clear. Not defending this in any way. I mean, you've got what Microsoft has hyped up as the most powerful console, dropping a major first-party game at 30 frames per second at launch. Sure, the performance mode's coming later, but this is a game that ostensibly was already delayed almost a year, because while they never originally gave a date, the original announcement of this said it'll be out September of 2022, and now it's coming out in the spring, May 2nd of 2023. So, they've had the time, they've got a powerful console, and what's compounding this for Bethesda and Arcane is that they've always shown the game running at 60 frames because they've been showing the PC version. I played the PC version for a couple of hours. There's a preview on IGN you can check out. That's off the PC version, unsurprisingly. So, to drop this like 3 weeks before launch, it's not great. I imagine they didn't want to do it that way. I suspect if I were trying to think like either a developer or a PR or marketing person, they probably just were waiting as long as they could to see if the developers at Arcane were going to be able to squeeze the performance mode in for launch. And when the word finally came down of, no, we can't get this in and still make May 2nd, I guess that's why we're hearing about this now, because this is the kind of bad news you would have wanted to get out of the way a month or more ago. But we talked about this on Podcast Unlocked this week, and I invite everybody to check out. We had a pretty long conversation about this. Max, I feel like, as somebody that owns both consoles, that's covered this industry, even with an Xbox focus for so long, I just feel like this wouldn't happen to a Sony first-party game. Like, this is another time where Microsoft is stepping on a rake. And it's just like, it's an unforced error of big first-party game. They've had for multiple years running this problem of, where are the exclusive games? Oh, great, you finally have some coming in 2022. Sure, Hi-Fi Rush, just A+. They get all the credit in the world for shadow dropping that. Awesome, that gets 2023 off to a great start. Hopefully gets some momentum going. And here's that rake we're going to step on and smack ourselves in the face and halt that momentum. Oh, you're the big Arcane game that's finally coming out. Oh, yeah, it's only 30 frames. And, is 30 frames the end of the world? No, but I feel like and understandably so, there's a different, higher expectation for frame rate when it's a first-person shooter versus, say, a third-person narrative, cinematic action-adventure game.
That took the words out of my mouth. That was what I was going to go to with it. I feel like a co-op, four people playing. I just feel like it is a fast-paced game. It is the kind of thing where your performance is actually it matters. And you say it's not a deal breaker, but for a lot of people it is. I know plenty of people will see something running at 30 and be like, I'll hold out. No, thank you. Yeah, it's a bummer. And there's that awkward thing of, when do you make this announcement? Like, is there any good time to say this? Like, would they have been better off if they just shipped the game and they said, oh, sorry, we don't have 60 frames per second yet. That's coming. We hear you. Or is, again, we know that gamers get upset when they're shown something and then the finished product isn't that thing. Whether it's like puddles in Spider-Man or the entirety of No Man's Sky,
or all of Aliens: Colonial Marines.
Exactly. Yeah,
a famous example.
It's a bold move to put up a bunch of 60 frames a second gameplay and then be like, oh, by the way, the console this thing is exclusive to can't do that.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. We'll be watching the launch of Redfall with great interest. I like Arcane games, but this is sort of an unknown quantity as a new IP, and just things like this keep happening, like the 30 frames per second, and then the fact that there's an always online connection required, even if you're playing in single player mode. So I don't know. It has a little bit of an uphill battle, I think, getting people excited for that launch. Okay, I have the result of the poll from last episode. We were talking about E3's disappearance out of 2023 and possibly disappearing forever. And we asked you, if E3 is actually dead forever, how will you feel about it? And half of you said you're going to miss it. and I will miss it too. I'm right there with you. I always looked forward to E3, both as a gamer, and it was always just really, really fun and exciting to cover for IGN. 31% said that they're fine with E3 going away. The publishers are streaming. The publishers handling their own streaming events is working just fine. And then just under 20% said you are indifferent to whether or not E3 ever returns. A new poll for you to vote on for next episode. What new hardware would you be most excited for? A Nintendo Switch 2 or a Switch Pro, a Sony Handheld, or Pro versions of PS5, Xbox Series X? Make sure to vote at IGN.com. We'll share the results with you next episode. And that's going to do it for this edition of Next Gen Console Watch. Thank you to both Max and Ryan. Thank you to everyone working behind the scenes in our LA and San Francisco studios to make this episode possible. My name is Damon. We'll be back next week with more PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, and other next gen hardware news. We'll see you then.